evening, everyone. My name is Sis Paulson, and I'm the president of the Palmetto Historical Commission. It is really lovely to see you all here this evening. And on behalf of the Palmetto Historical Commission, the Manatee County Ag Museum, the City of Palmetto, and Manatee County CHIPS Shores Office, I'd like to welcome you all here this evening to celebrate and view the works of the talented African-American artists known as the Highwaymen. Through their paintings, the Highwaymen have documented Florida's landscape history for future generations and paved the way for other African American artists. I see this evening as a night of generosity. First, the generosity of Albert Bean Backus, who tutored a young Alfred Hare, who in turn encouraged countless other young African American artists to explore their own style of painting. This brings us to this evening and the generosity of Mr. and Mrs. Don Ball, who have graciously loaned their personal collection of Highwaymen art so that others can learn of their contributions to history too. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of our generous volunteers this evening who have donated their time and their energies and food for this special evening reception. Welcome all. And at this time, I'd like to welcome and introduce Robin Bryant, the president of the Ag Museum. Robin.
Thank you, Sis. Like Sis says, I'm Robin Bryant. I'm the president of the Manatee County Agricultural Museum. And I want to say I'm really glad that Sis mentioned generosity in her speech, because we really want to thank all of you for being here tonight and being so generous with your time to join us and come see this exhibit tonight. And we hope that you will take this back and share this with your friends and your family so that they will know about this exhibit and come join us over the next 2 months to see it. We also would like to thank our supporters and all of our volunteers. Without them, we could not put on events like this. And we hope that you will find it in your heart to continue to support us so that in the future we can put on more events like this and invite you back over and over again. So tonight, the Ball's generosity is very important to this event. We thank them for allowing us to have this event here and so graciously supplying the artwork. But we also want to thank the generosity of these artists for committing their talent to the canvas so that we could share it for generations to come. And also, from what I understand about Janie and Don, is that we need to thank Don's grandmother for introducing them to the Highwaymen artists back in the 1960s. So I think that started this whole thing rolling, and over the years, they obviously have added quite a bit to their collection. And I know that over the last 10 years they've added the bulk of the paintings to their collection. And I found it interesting that in order to do so they had to buy the house next door so they'd have room for the entire collection. So I understand that there's a lot of other wonderful items that they have in there as well. So and I do understand also that Don and Janie were both teachers. And they are continuing to teach us today with sharing this collection with us. And with that, I'd like to introduce Don Ball to tell us more about the Highwaymen artist.
Thank you very much. I'm not real sure how to follow up after that introduction. Let me first say how fortunate all of you are in this community to have this park, this museum, the professional staff that dedicate all of their time, and let me guarantee you, a lot of it's volunteer time. I've had the pleasure to work with this museum in the past, being a fifth-generation Florida citrus family. About 10 years ago, I finally decided it was time for me to start collecting my family history of Florida citrus. And the citrus labels, which is a form of art, of course, is the most illustrative of the history of our past groves and packing houses, and one other member here tonight is an avid collector as well. And we coordinate our efforts to put on a Manatee County local area exhibit of rare labels. Some I had the originals of, some I had copies of, but we made copies and donated the copies to the museum. But we had a wonderful time putting that exhibit on here. And then you had a wonderful Cattleman exhibit not too terribly long ago, and my family was also involved in cattle raising. So I had some things that I've collected as a Florida historian, and made some of those available to the museum. The Highwaymen, as she already stated, and you have a pretty good write-up of our background, my wife and I, and our interest in collecting the Florida Highwaymen. So I'm not going to dwell a lot of time on that, other than to tell you that the Highwayman art is perhaps one of the most illustrative and important examples of old Florida that exist. These are men with one woman, Marianne Carroll, that for nearly 50 years have gone out and painted what they saw of old Florida. Starting in the 1960s, actually starting in the 1950s, a couple of them started painting because they found that because of their artistic ability, they could make a better living and provide a better way of life for their families by being artists rather than working in the orange groves as pickers or in the packing houses or whatever manual labor that was available to them. They overcame a lot of challenges being black artists, especially in their early years. And they would go up and down the highwaymen. They would go on the highways, US 1, Miami to Jacksonville, over to Orlando, and into Okeechobee. They almost never got over to the West Coast. And so, you know, they still are actively painting, and they're still on the East Coast. Fort Pierce, Vero Beach, Melbourne, Cocoa, Merritt Island, and Frontenac. And you say, well, where's Frontenac? Well, it's just a little bit north of Cocoa, and that's where Robert Lewis is from. And I'll take this advantage to plug this. In buying, you buy what's offered to you, and sometimes you have to buy a little extra item in order to get what you really want. And this is an example of a Robert Lewis that's probably 10 years old. I didn't want to buy the painting, but I had to buy the painting in order to own the other two paintings that I wanted. As a result, I've been a little embarrassed to have it with all my original art. And I said, you know, Robert Lewis III, who's really the businessman of the family, if he had that in the gallery, he'd want $500, $600 for that, even though it's a copy on canvas. His dad did sign it. It's signed on the back. Whatever it sells for tonight is yours, and the museum gets all of the proceeds. So if it sells for $100, you just got it for a third what I paid for it. It's one of the better examples of some of Mr. Lewis's early work. And I wish to hell it were real, because I would have kept it. But it is not, so I'm being very honest with you, but it'll be a little extra income towards paying some of the expenses that this Highwayman project cost the museum to put on. Also tonight I brought some art for sale It has a discount from the market value, and then the museum will benefit from that. And in the collection, this is one of 4 paintings that will stay on exhibit till the end of the exhibit, but if it sells, you pay a 10% on the price. That 10% goes to the museum, and then at the end of the exhibit, you can buy it or one of the other 3 paintings, and those are yours. And believe me, I don't get rich off of this. And fortunately, we're in a very blessed position to work, donate, and help museums out, because we don't believe there's anything any more important in our communities here, Pinellas County, Brevard County, that will help continue the heritage of Florida for our kids, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. We don't have any great-grandchildren yet. We're not old enough. The Highwaymen are an elite group. Some of them have passed on. Most of them are in their mid-late 60s to, I think, maybe 1 or 2 of them might be knocking on the door of 80. They're not going to be with us forever, so by all means, do not miss the opportunity in July to come visit with them and support them. They still are making a living out of this. Marianne Carroll is a minister. She has her own church. Almost all of her money goes to supporting her black community in her area that are needy. She is the most wonderful lady you could ever hope to meet. She just got back from Washington, D.C. A very proud woman. She was an educator. And my wife and Marianne have gotten to have a good communication with each other, and we think the world of Marianne. We've enjoyed our meeting with all of the Highwaymen. They're just down to earth, really great people, and so gifted. There's a few of them that aren't so gifted. Rodney Demps is not so gifted, but Rodney Demps is still one of the original Highwaymen. He retired for 10 years, and a friend of mine got him back to painting 3 years ago, and he's doing better art today than he did 30 years ago. Some of it. As I said, most of what I had, there's some early Upson paintings on the left side. Sam Newton you won't see here. Anyway, I don't know what else I can really tell you about the Highwaymen. You've got a good history in your folder. You've got 7 books on the Highwaymen. I encourage all of you to either go to the library or purchase 1 or 2 reference books on the Highwaymen and learn. And then seriously consider, not necessarily tonight, but in a month, coming back and buying a Highwayman for that daughter or that son or that grandchild, and preserving some Florida history for them, for their future, because they won't know old Florida. Most of us are fortunate to know old Florida. You know, most of us have been around, not all of us, I don't mean to insult the young people. Most of us have seen big changes since the 50s and 60s. You know, I grew up over on the East Coast most of my life, hunting, fishing. I can't pass up a painting that has a fisherman in it. I mean, you know, collectors and dealers both know they have me nailed when they have a Highwayman painting with a fisherman in it. If any of you have a question, I'll try to honestly answer it. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that the artist will be here. When will that be, please?
If you have 10 artists here, you're going to have almost every single artist that is still traveling and doing a show. Because there are some of them that just will not go to a show. I don't think Willie Daniels almost ever does a show. I know Sam Newton doesn't. Rodney Demps doesn't go to shows. John Maynard used to go to a couple of them. Wells is in such poor condition and blind. He's been to a show this year, but I thought they'd take him out in an ambulance before the show was over. He's in very, I don't think he'll be with us very long. So to have 10 of the artists here, please don't miss that opportunity. There is a list. I'm not so sure. It's not in the blue pass out tonight, but there is going to be a brochure sent out. And there will be other advertising. And the network that's here tonight, they will be promoting it. They will do some additional advance publicity as well as the local media. That's on a Saturday. It's just before the exhibit is over. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Did any of them over the years receive any formal training?
No, ma'am. Almost all of them are self-taught. Now, Beanie Backus worked with some of them, some of the early ones. And so he did help train and educate some of their artistic talents by advising them and working with them. And of course, Alfred Hare, who was killed in 1969 or 1970 in a bar by accident, was kind of the father and kind of the leader of the early black artists. And once he was killed, the Highwaymen kind of backed off of doing a lot of their art, and they weren't as active for a period of time. Harold Newton kind of stepped in and took the place of Alfred Hare. And of course, Harold Newton has passed away. George and Ellis Buckner, who were very gifted artists, they are gone. Some of the real talent has already passed and gone their way. And other artists are still very talented, but their peak seems to be in the early 2000 period, and that's what made them explode in popularity with a couple of books, with Gary Monroe's book in 2000. By 2004, 2005, Highwaymen paintings were bringing $3,000, $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, some of them. And it was like watching the real estate market. Zoom, and then it has taken a very noticeable adjustment. So right now is a wonderful opportunity to pick up a nice Highwayman at a very reasonable market value. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any young ones coming up?
There is. They call those a second generation. Sam Newton has a son who is Tracy Newton. Al Hare has a son who is painting. Roy McClendon has a son that's painting. Robert Butler has 2 or 3 children that paint, and very talented kids. And they do some shows. And they do some really extremely well done art. So there is a new generation of Highwaymen that will be painting for many, many years to come. Yes. Thank you for that question, because I overlooked saying something. Again, support this museum. The Ag Museum, the park, the Historical Museum. You can't be any more fortunate than to have this facility. Make sure that your county commissioners know that. Make sure that your people in places of power who can help make decisions to support the budgets. You know, it's almost sad what's happening to some museums in parts of Florida right now. You know, you're very fortunate to have this in the operating position that they are fortunate to be in. Don't take it for granted. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis's son was on Anna Maria Island, and he mentioned that he thought paintings were being submitted to the Smithsonian.
Isn't that why Marianne Carroll was up there?
She gave Michelle Obama a painting. I don't know if it was an outright gift or it just went to the White House just several weeks ago. As far as the Smithsonian acquiring some of the Highwaymen collection, I have heard talk of that. I have heard talk of a movie production of the history of the Highwaymen to be done in the future. I have heard that a book on Marianne Carroll is going to be published in the near future. I know that Robert Butler may have his book here in July that he has had published. But I don't know what involvement I'm sure probably they already have some very, very fine examples of Highwaymen art, just as the Capitol has some great paintings that were done by some of the artists. You know, almost all of the governors have been very much Highwaymen enthusiasts in the last 2 or 3 governors. I don't know about this one. This one probably could care less. And he wouldn't spend the money anyway. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Please enjoy seeing the rest of the exhibit throughout the buildings. I will be here to work with you on any painting that might have some interest to you. Again, the market value is a realistic market value. I didn't jack it up so I could reduce it. Sam Newton's paintings at his galleries normally are priced at 30 to 40% more than what I have them priced at. That's his gallery. And that's also not what he'll necessarily sell a painting for, obviously. But Sam's a very proud artist, and he's not going to discount a whole lot unless you're buying 5 at a time, which I have to do in order to get a good discount. And the museum will benefit from anything that I do over here. And I did that only to give you an opportunity to buy or at least see a few of the paintings and get a better idea of values, because we have nothing else priced in the exhibit other than this painting and 3 others that you can purchase with a deposit. And the deposit goes to the museum. And then you get to finish buying the painting at the end of the exhibit. So it's my way of thanking the museum for allowing me to share these opportunities with you, because I get a great pleasure sharing what we enjoy the most, and that's collecting. And I've been a collector all my life, and I wouldn't know how to live without being a collector. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for putting up with me.
Thanks again, Don. We're really blessed to have you as a supporter here at the Historical Park. I'm Mandy Polson. I'm the coordinator of the Palmetto Historical Park. I'm with the Historical Resources Department of the Clerk's Office. We're really glad that you all came today. I want to thank the Historical Commission's reception committee, Sis Paulson and Jean Aldrich, as well as the board of directors of the Manatee County Ag Museum. They've done a wonderful job getting the food together for us today, so enjoy and thank you guys. We really appreciate that. The Florida Outsiders Artists, it's a documentary about the Highwaymen, is going to be playing in the Agricultural Museum. It's almost an hour long. It only holds about 30 people in the room that it's in. So if you go over there and it's crowded, just come back later. We have the exhibit running for a couple of months, and anytime that we're open, if you want to come in and see the movie, we'll be glad to put it on for you. So if you can't get in there tonight, all is not lost. Come back and we will let you see it then. There are paintings in all the buildings. Make sure you get into all of them to see all of the paintings and enjoy them. One of the buildings might be a little warm, but the air conditioner has been repaired, so if you get in there and it's warm, it'll cool off soon. Thank you all for coming.
It was really important that to acknowledge that our staff was integral in getting this exhibit here at the park and the museum. They went up to a Highwaymen show that was in Safety Harbor. Yes, was in Safety Harbor, and they were speaking to the artist and looking to possibly set something up. And Mr. and Ms. Ball have graciously allowed us some of their collections to exhibit here at the park and the museum previously, and when we found out about their extensive collection, we connected with them. For the next 2 months, we will have all of the artwork on exhibit throughout the park and the Agricultural Museum, but on July 16th, we'll have a meet and greet with at least 10 of the original Highwaymen artists, and that'll be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can come, you can visit with the artists, talk with them, and they will also have their artwork for sale during that event.
Well, the exposure's wonderful to let people know that we're here and that we have things for all sorts of generations to see.
I agree with Sis. Anything that we can do to bring more individuals into the historical park and the Ag Museum, as well as the city of Palmetto, is important. And history is a huge part of our daily lives, and we want to bring not only families and children and the elderly, but everyone to learn about the history of the area.
I think it's excellent because it brings more of the community here to one of our focal points, that we bring people here year-round, and to bring more arts here is just a delight. And you can see the crowd that is drawn out this evening, and as the artists come in weeks to come, that's going to be very exciting for the community to come and actually meet the artists and watch them doing their work, and it'll inspire a lot of people, maybe some budding artists yet to come. Actually, I've met one of the artists already, and I bought one of his copies of a print, and I had it matted and framed by a local studio here in Palmetto, of course, and she used some very unique bordering in it, and it just made the colors pop, and that's on display in my office. I had bought it, at the League of Cities conference, so it's excellent, and it just delights me that the Ag Commission here and the Historical Commission have taken the initiative to bring the artist here, and I just can't express how much we appreciate as a community the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Ball shared their personal collection of the Highwaymen artistry.
I was raised in Miami, Florida, with my grandparents and my family being a fifth-generation Florida family up on the east coast of Titusville on the Indian River. And for several generations, they were early Florida citrus growers. And I went to high school in Miami and then went to Tallahassee, and then I had 1 year of law school, and then I came to Pinellas County to go to law school, and then I went into teaching for several years, and I got frustrated with teaching, so I went to the Boy Scouts, which paid just about the same amount of money. And I started collecting very early on, and the more I collected, the more I started selling to pay for more items for the collection, and it turned into a full-time business, and it's been a full-time business almost 40 years. Well, my grandmother, of course, was an influence because she bought directly from Harold Newton and one or two others in Titusville back in the 60s. And I didn't really focus on collecting art at that period of time. But I certainly was influenced by my grandmother and her appreciation for art. And then when I got into buying and selling and collecting the antique weapons, I would do local Florida shows, and I met Charles Walker at a Fort Pierce show in 1987, and he was a wildlife illustrator. And at that time, there was no such name as the Highwaymen. But he had a couple of great wildlife paintings, which I bought at the end of the day, and I was his only sale. And 25 years later, Charles and I met early this year, and I reminded him of that incident, and I bought a painting. After 25 years, I bought another one of his paintings for my collection. And you know, it's been such an enjoyable part of my life and my wife's life, and meeting the Highwaymen, collecting the Highwaymen, and passing our heritage on to our children and our grandchildren. 5 granddaughters could care less about antique weapons, but they love the art. It is unique, and it's a part of our Florida heritage, depicting the old Florida that I remember as a youngster, and that's true of many collectors. It's a part of their heritage. And these 26 black artists, all men with the exception of Marianne Carroll, who's the only woman artist, will be an important part of our heritage forever. So I encourage people to at least learn about the Highwaymen. And in today's economy, a lot of their paintings are very affordable. And it's a good opportunity for people to at least buy a painting of old Florida and enjoy it. So I've worked with this museum on several occasions on several different various projects, including their local citrus history when they were doing a citrus history. I worked with them a little bit on some of their cattle history when they did a cattle display, and then the director, of course, has visited me several times and decided that she thought the Highwaymen would make for a wonderful opportunity to be an exhibit at some point in time, and I agree. It's your collections should be shared with other people in the community and allow them an opportunity to develop an appreciation for whatever it might be. This is their livelihood, and even at their age, most of them are extremely talented, and some of them paint as well today as they've ever painted. And so that'll be a wonderful opportunity on July the 16th when they are physically here for people to come to that event, meet the Highwaymen, and see their current existing works of art. Today, museums struggle just to survive, to stay open. And I'm active with several museums on this coast as well as on the other coast, and they've had to cut their hours to be open to the public. They've had to reduce their professional staff and assistant staff, and their overall operating budgets have been reduced, and it's unfortunate. It's almost tragic. Some of our really, really great Florida museums are virtually almost at a point of closing. And if the community does not support the museums, then the day will come when they'll regret that they did not, because the museum won't exist. Well, it's important because it's an extension of the opportunities for people to gain more knowledge. It's also an opportunity for when the Highwaymen are here, for them to not only support the Highwaymen, but to acquire directly from one of the living artists a piece of their work to keep as an important part of their remembrance, not only of the Highwaymen, but of old Florida.